everyone. Welcome to the Clean Break. My name is Bita Safari. I'm the founder of Gigo Clean Technology and your host. A while ago, when we were getting ready to produce this podcast, we were thinking what would be the best subject to talk about. And I thought it would be the best if we talk about real people with real problems and real life. So coincidentally, I had lunch with a close friend of mine who came from a long battle with depression, and she's now happy and healthy. She is a very beautiful individual, very sophisticated, and she has always been maintaining herself and her lifestyle to the best possible ways. And then she turned into a weak and careless individual through battling with depression. So I thought it would be a good idea to talk about this problem, the problem that is increasing in the United States among teenagers and adults, and find out more about what is going on with the early signs. What are the early signs of the depression, and what can we do to help our friends and loved ones when we see those signs? And what are the relationship between depression and cleanliness? For that reason, I have invited a very dear and great guest, Samar Tehrani. Samar has a postmaster's. Uh, she finished postmaster's program in substance use counseling from the University of Colorado. She has master degree in educational psychology from the University of Colorado and bachelor degree in psychology from Metropolitan State University in Colorado. Without further say, I would like Samar to take it from here, talk about depression, and then educate us about the early signs of this disease and let us know what are the relationship between depression and cleaning. Samar?
Thank you, Bita, for inviting me, and thank you for actually bringing some attention to this issue because I think that oftentimes, mostly as clinicians and the medical community that addresses depression or anxiety in the early stages, these are some signs that we don't pay attention to, or we may not necessarily even ask our clients initially, right? However, we know that there are some really early signs to this issue that we can pick up on and actually help people who start to suffer in the early stages. I do have to say that obviously I'm working from home and I have a dog, so in case he barks, don't get startled. Um, so there are plenty of studies about the link between depression, anxiety, and cleaning, right? And maintaining a clean home, or maintaining um, hygiene, right? Clean hygiene. We know that people who suffer from anxiety and depression often lack certain aspects of the whole umbrella of what we call being clean, right? Whether it's your environment or whether it is your personal hygiene, right? And so there are reasons for it, right? When we look at depression and anxiety, it's a direct correlation between what's happening inside of our body based on outside stimuli. Obviously, what's going on in our environment that makes us feel the way that we do, whether it's stress, work stress, family stress, child stress, whatever it may be, that is linked to, the hormones that we produce that leads to the way, we feel, anxiety, depression, whatnot. Okay. So, I mean, from University of California to Idaho to Stanford to all of these major universities that do great research. There's plethora of research that anybody can look up. I don't have to necessarily link research to my talk today. Um, but we know that the hormone cortisol, for example, which is a steroid hormone that is produced in response to stress, for example, is by far more active if our physical environment is more cluttered. Okay. So we actually know, and again, plenty of studies show that in people that report that they have either a cluttered home, or they're in like middle of renovation and things just are not in place, in our physical space, or their physical office environment that they work in, which we spend a lot of hours in. If it's cluttered, these individuals have a tendency to report that they have more stress. Okay, and there's a direct link to that, right? So we know that. The other thing that we know is that women have a tendency to be adversely more affected by clutter than men. Okay. So again, this goes back to the production of hormones in our body, and also, we can't deny the fact that women are probably cultured more to um, believe that it is our responsibility to maintain a clean home. It is our responsibility to pick up and clean and and do that type of a chore, for example. So it could, that could be, the reason for it. So it could be environmental as well as hormonal, right? On the flip side, let's talk about depression a little bit. One of the first signs of depression is clear that as a person dealing with depression, what happens is that I, the self, am unable to fulfill certain responsibilities because of my state of being, right? Because I am not motivated, because I lack energy, right? Because my body feels completely fatigued. So what happens is that we see signs of people like not being so well put together if they're dealing with depression, right? And part of it is because of their state of being, their physical state of being. So one of the first signs of depression actually shows in the appearance of the person as well as in their physical environment. So there, there's these like direct correlations that are, pretty unique, and I think it's important for people to know, mostly when we look at our environment and people that, our friends, our family, our siblings, our children, when once they start to look a little, disheveled, that's normally a sign that there is some sort of mental health that's going on that they are dealing with.
Yeah, but there are days that, for example, I feel very depressed. I don't have energy, or I don't feel that I have enough motive to go through my daily routine. But I'm not depressed because next day I feel great. So, what is the fine line that we can explain to people not to confuse the mood change that can happen to anyone, right? With depression, which is a uh, actually serious mental health problem.
Without getting too technical about the like DSM standards and guidelines on depression and anxiety and how do we diagnose, there is a obviously, the Psychological Association gives healthcare providers, a guideline, right? How many days has this been going on? How long have you been feeling this way? Is there a history? So of course we go through, a bunch of questions that we ask, and then based on the answer of those questions, we diagnose, right? So let's put that aside. First of all, it's completely normal and absolutely like the normal, a human cycle of life to feel different types of moods, right? And so if one day, out of, I don't know, a whole month, you're just exhausted and your mood is very low for whatever, the external reasons may be, and you don't feel like picking up the clutter around your house, that does not indicate, a major mental health issue that needs to be addressed, right? So what we're talking about is, um, for example, if you come into my house and normally, everything is tidy and, everything's sort of put away, we're not talking about obsessively, in a sense, but you walk into a harmonious environment, That's one thing. And then if you come into my house and you see that like there is loads of laundry that hasn't been done and the sink is full of dishes and my countertops are a mess, and you know, that's a clear indication that there is something going on. That's a clear indication that I have not been attending to these tasks, cleaning tasks, for a period of time. So where it's visually distinct, we can actually absolutely look at it. So there's a difference between you just having a Sunday.
Right, that's true. That's very true. To have a lazy Sunday and being depressed. But in this case, when I was talking to my friend, I thought everything happened to her very sudden. But she was explaining that no, it was a graduate thing that, ch- you know, she changed her behavior toward herself, toward others, toward her environment. For me, because maybe we didn't notice that she was going through all that, and all of the sudden when we realized, it was when that she was really deep into it. So how is the pattern? Is that it starts slow and then gradually goes fast, or is this a curve that it starts from one point and gets to the other point, and then at that point people can be called depressed?
So this is very unique, and it, it, it's hard to indicate that, so if someone has they've been diagnosed clinically depressed, right? So there's some people just have hormonal imbalances. This has nothing to do with environmental factors or life situation that can lead a human to a state of depression for a period of time, right? And so 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 that's one um, factor, okay, for humans. The other factor is situational and environmental. We go through, life issues, loss of a job, loss of a loved one, divorce. I mean, it- all sorts of challenges and adversities in life. So what happens is that we don't one day wake up to it, right? It does happen gradually. It really does happen gradually. So for somebody to say that, you know what, it's not like I went to sleep last night and I woke up and I was, flat, but it happens gradually. And unfortunately, often people don't even realize that this is happening to them at the beginning stages of it. They actually recognize it towards, where it is problematic. It's creating issues. They can't roll out of bed. They can't motivate to go walk their dog. They can't motivate to cook themselves a simple meal, right? This is when they start to notice that something is up, and or the excessive cryings and uneasy, the feeling of being extremely uneasy, that people start to notice, right? And then it's really interesting that oftentimes those around us notice the changes before we actually know, because we're living it, so we're struggling and living it, right? Now people who have a tendency to be prone, they notice their signs as they're starting. They notice, they're like, oh, I'm not doing this or I'm not doing that. They have basic signs that that are their red flags, and then they are like, oh, I'm starting to get depressed again, or anxious, anxiety.
So in that case, what what help can the loved ones can give to that person to help that person to go through the process easier, or maybe to help them not to go that deep in it? I know that there are medical sources available, but from the easy in-home remedies, what are the correct way to deal with someone who's depressed?
Because when you contacted me about this topic, I started to read a little bit, and it was really interesting. There is a lady, and I don't, I should have taken a note on it, but I believe in Indiana, if I'm not mistaken. And one of the things that, because she went through this state of depression. And one of the things that she did is she started to reach out in her community, and she said, I am willing to help a mom. She's a mom herself. I'm willing to help a mom declutter her home in order, because of depression. And then all of a sudden she was like inundated. And then she started this group of moms helping moms basically declutter and, clean your space and organize your space so you can feel better. So I thought that, I was like, wow, that's so interesting. That's so cool for sort of a grassroots movement to happen, because somebody experienced this. So they're um, pushing their experience into the community so that they can help their immediate community. So I thought that was really interesting. But one of the things that, yeah, I thought it was brilliant and really sweet and kind, simultaneously. One of the things that we can do that's important is one, we have to ask someone if they want help, right? Sometimes we think what we imagine for somebody else, it will help them. And in fact, it wouldn't. It would cause them more anxiety or, sadness or whatnot, right? But we can simply ask. We can say, do you want me to come over? Like let's say if my sister's feeling this way, I can say, hey, you want me to come over and help you pick up a little bit, right? These are some of the things that we can do. The other thing is, if we're really noticing a person that is close to us that we sort of know their behavioral patterns really starting to struggle, we can extend a help by saying, hey, I noticed that you're struggling. Are you doing anything about it? Would you like some help? Is there anything I can do for you? Right. So these are some of the verbal cues that we can start to use towards a loved one who is struggling, in a sense. Noticing that oftentimes, we shy away because we don't know exactly how to approach it. Your friend hasn't showered in 4 days and you're like, "I don't know if I should say anything or not. Are you gonna get insulted?" But you don't have to say, "Well, look, I've noticed you haven't showered in 4 days." But you can say, "Hey, I've noticed you're not the same. Is there something going on?" Right? So there are ways to approach this issue with kindness and grace so that the recipient, we can invite the recipient to be open to receiving our help, you know, whatever that help may be.
So, to what extent therapy is going to help? Because we know that therapy is going to help. Then, with this, in severe cases, people need to get medication, right?
Yeah.
So, to what extent you feel that as a therapist you can help, and to what extent you refer them to, ask for further help?
I think medication and therapy is simultaneously used widely. It's not, there you don't use one in place of the other. Medication has its own. It's like it does its own thing, and simultaneously you can engage in different types of therapy that can be extremely helpful. So I think there is a misperception that you can do one without the other, or you have to do both of it both at the same time, or you know, again, it's extremely individualistic. I have clients that very quickly I refer for medication because I recognize that unless you get medicated and become stabilized, talk therapy isn't necessarily going to do anything for you. Other people are very motivated for talk therapy to take place first, right? And they're willing to. Um, so I think it is. I don't think necessarily we can. Again, it's like one plus one never equals two in the field of psychological and behavioral health, right? So I think that has a lot to do with the clinician that you're working with, and as well as your unique situation, as well as, and sometimes it's the medical doctors that people open up to that refer patients to behavioral therapies, talk therapy for example being one.
Okay. And exercise, of course, is going to be a great help. But when someone is so weak to take care of their daily routine, how we can encourage them to do exercise? Because we hear this a lot. And sometimes I ask, okay, it's kind of impossible for someone cannot even take out her or himself out of bed to start running or walking. So,
Yes. So, and I mean, I'm really glad you bring this up because we know that to elevate your heart rate for half an hour, right, is similar. I mean, studies show now that, the power of exercise, again, because of the hormones that are released, can be similar to some medication assisted treatment. Okay, some, not all, but some, right? And we know, again, based on, neurological studies and psychological studies, that people who exercise report that they have lower levels of stress because of cortisol release, right? And depression subsides because of, I mean, simply just going for a half an hour brisk walk, right? So that has already been established again, right? And I'm sure your listeners know of these studies and we don't have to, talk about it. Again, when you have a patient who shows up who's unable to get out of bed, right? Clearly they're not going to go run a marathon in 3 months, right? They're not doing that, and you know that. So what we do, we always start slow. We don't start big. So in such cases, maybe medication assisted treatment is the appropriate approach in order to stabilize this person, sort of bring him out of that dip, talk therapy, and then push them into um, or you know
physical activities.
some sort of physical activity. Absolutely. Encourage them, not push them, encourage them to some sort of physical activity.
Actually, it's very interesting that how mental health can impact one person as individual and as a whole, and the relationship between that individual and the environment and the society and all that. So when we see someone that is going through a drastic change in behavior, we should not just ignore the signs. We should consider that maybe that person needs more help, right? So if we see someone that has stopped taking care of herself, himself, or kids, dog, not to walk the dog and not to take care of the households, let that be for a long time, then that's the time that we can, offer help and maybe, start doing, helping with cleaning their house or doing a little thing that we can do to just motivate them to go back to their routines.
Well, we do. I mean, I also want to say, does cleaning equal, clean bill of mental health? And the answer is no, right? Obviously, we know that people maintain beautifully clean, homes who suffer from mental health as well. Um,
Yeah, we don't want people to become OCDs with cleaning as well. We get that.
but there is a direct correlation between the two, and part of that is because the feeling of being overwhelmed stops us from doing certain things, and also lack of energy and being unable to motivate yourself to move forward to get certain tasks done, right? But remember that there are plenty of also studies that show the reverse, right? People use cleaning as a means of calming themselves down. And cleaning, I mean, we've always heard, oh my God, I was besides myself. I cleaned my whole house and it made me feel so much better, right? Because of the repetitive behavior of, like, for example, vacuuming is very, very calming to certain people. Mopping is very calming to some people. um, so there's the
Interesting.
it's true.
Certainly that doesn't work for me. Vacuuming doesn't calm me. No.
Right. So yeah, we just want to make sure that we're not sending one message without the other. It does not mean just because you maintain a tidy, clean home that you are not suffering from, mental health issues.
We understand. Okay. Thank you so much, Samar. It was a great conversation. Thank you for your time. And thank you, everyone, for listening to our podcast. Please subscribe to our channel on YouTube and share your experience. If you are experiencing something similar or you would like to share your feedbacks, we would love to hear from you. Thank you. My name is Vita Safari. I'm the founder and the CEO of Gigo Clean Technology. Gigo Clean is an application that connects consumers to cleaners directly. It's free to download, fast and easy to use. If you are a working mother like me, Gigo Clean is the way to go to keep your household clean. Try it.